And you talked about setting the objectives. How do you actually measure the efficacy of the exercise at the end? How do you know how do you measure whether it's worked or
Well, I think first of all, if you write your objectives properly, you ought to actually write them in such a way, a bit like SMART objectives, where you can actually verify them and say, well, how can I demonstrate them? And actually, we find out a lot of exercise objectives are really poorly written because you can't actually say whether you're pass or fail the instant objectives. I think there's also an interesting bit around, you do an exercise and you get your 12 points or your 10 points out of the exercise, but there is no measurement of whether your team is getting better or worse. And we did some work with the team, gave them lots of training, they were quite good. The next year they went back and they were worse. But when you write an exercise, how do you categorize that? So we have an instant team assessment, and some people will not touch any word of assessment at all. The unions will be up in arms and we had the word assessment even anywhere near our exercise. But what we do is we have a number of 6 categories and we get the team self-assess themselves. Do you know what he's doing? Does the plan very good? How do you find the leadership? Did you know what to do? Team. So we get the team to self-assess themselves, and then we have the umpires that assess them, and we produce a radar chart for 6 different categories. And then next year, we can go back and actually say you're getting better or worse. Some people like that. They like that categorizing. Lots of people don't.
For sure.
And so, but assessment is a difficult word.
How about you, James?
It all stems to aims and objectives. There is a 1950s educational theorist called Bloom's, and if you use Bloom's taxonomy to write your aims and objectives, Bloom's talks about how you prove understanding, because it's all about proving understanding. You can never use the word understanding in an objective.
Yes.
But what Bloom's does, that splits the name, the concept of understanding into various approaches, then gives you the words that you should be using in your objectives. I love SMART modeling objectives, specific, measurable, agreed, realistic, time-bound. And you can do that in all your objectives as well, because what you've got to do, and the good practice guidelines goes on about this, aim, objective, expected outcomes. So you've got to be able to have an expected outcome. And if the participants achieve the expected outcome within a parameter, they have achieved success. It's relatively simple. A lot of people go into exercises and they don't link the aims and objectives to what they're doing, or the aims and objectives and what they're doing to the plans. They go in and throw in questions. And I've been a participant in a number of those, and I just sit there going, the person who's facilitating and designed this, the exercise director, needs to be thrown out of the window because they've got no idea what they're doing. Running an exercise is an art or a craft. It isn't something that you can do without training. And this is where the BCI courses around running effective exercises are really useful to take people from low-level simple exercises right up to delivering more complex level, which you have to do eventually. Certainly when you're operating at strategic level. For example, I am an underling in the organization and I have to go up to a strategic level and run an exercise. How daunting is that?
Yes.
You've got to be good and confident and competent to take on that level. Equally, you're going to have to work at strategic, tactical, and operational. So you've got to be pretty good at organising exercises.
And what are your favoured debriefing methods?
I went on the Home Office structured debrief course 2 days, and basically what I learnt was there's only 3 questions you really ever need to ask in a debrief, because you've taken notes during the exercise. What did we do really well? What didn't we do particularly well? And if we had the opportunity to do this again, what would we do differently? Bubble.
I think you need a little bit of, your umpires need to have a script of what they're looking for against your objectives, but they ought to have a script to say, look, actually, in the army had something tepid oil, and it was, that was a kind of training, and I can't remember all the different elements of it, but is to have a look at the plans, have a look at the people, have a look at the procedures, have a look at the skills. So you have a framework within to manage it rather than just pick on 4 or 5 different points. I also like in the feedback to make sure that everyone participates. So normally, you don't have an awful lot bit, but I like to say, let's get everyone here, even the people who run the exercise, the role players, the exercise director, all the players in the exercise, let's get one learning point from you each. I'll probably start with the team leader, go around the table, and then I'll end it up as the exercise director. But I think it's really good to get them to talk and them you have to keep it quite concise, but get a point off them, and they feel they're included in the debrief. And you've also got some cracking points for your debrief point if you're a bit short there. So involving them in debrief. I don't do debriefs the next day. I think the hot debrief, I think after it's hard to get people back together again afterwards, but I don't know if you do differently.
I mean, having done an awful lot of incident debriefs, because an incident debrief is exactly the same as an exercise debrief.
Yeah.
And having done both, I always do a hot debrief.
Yeah.
Because you get a lot of raw emotion, moment data, the way people really feel because they haven't thought about it. It's very raw. What I generally then to do is I look for patterns and trends with the raw data, and I pick out specific points that I might want to take forward to a structured debrief. And then I maybe not bring everybody back, but I might bring strategic people back, tactical people back, operational people from a particular unit. I bring them back and do a structured debrief, which then is a lot more cognitive. It's a lot more focused and a lot more specific, but I don't always do it. I try to get as much as I possibly can at the hot debrief, and then only run a structured debrief if I absolutely have to. But the skills from an exercise are exactly the same as an incident debrief, really. You just have to be a little bit more mindful about having a more structured approach to your debrief.
Do you have a methodology for capturing? Some people don't want to say it out loud. They don't want to speak about it. They just want to come talk to you privately. Do you have a sort of a super cold?
Well, what you can do is also, what we quite often do is feedback form. Sometimes, I don't do with senior managers, but maybe more junior managers, you might want to have a kind of happiness form to say, actually, are you happy with it? Did you enjoy it? Because what you don't want them is then to complain to the boss, say the exercise was rubbish. So I do that sometime. And maybe the exercise is just challenging, so they didn't enjoy it, but it's not there to entertainment. But I think there's also there, if you use a feedback form, they can put maybe some things in there that they wouldn't like to say out loud. And it's another way of collating information together. My top tip from feedback forms is never send it to them, because you'll never get it back. You've got to get them to feed it in the room and take it off them there. Otherwise, they'll never come back ever again.
I mean, another interesting point is, for me, a debrief is about the exercise and the scenario in the event. But I always run an evaluation as well.
Right.
Now, and I think you run a joint one.
Yeah.
I try and keep them separate. So the evaluation is how the exercise went. So how did the facilitator do? What about the room? What about the lighting? What about the lunch? What about this? What about that? What about the other? And then there's the ops part in the debrief. And I think you have to do them both, evaluation. Now, I know you can send them an evaluation.
Yeah.
And I'm happy with sending them a Survey Monkey or something to
something
evaluate.
like that,
But you've got to be careful that you don't just evaluate the performance of you as a facilitator and the things. The most important thing you're ever going to get is that data of the experience, the immersive experience that they've just had. Because as Charlie so rightly says, that's writing your post-exercise report for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
All that data for the post-exercise report.
I think there's also another little bit. I always try in my points. I never try to do more than about 10, 15 points. I did see from other consultants, you don't often get to see other consultants who had 73 different points. Oh. But there were points like, this person spoke a bit too loudly, the tea wasn't warm enough. It was some kind of, the phone wasn't loud enough. It was some minor. And I think there's a difference between things that a specialist in that exercise, so it's not going to be recreated again, like they didn't do this thing or they didn't do that thing. It's something you can fix, whereas to say, look, the plan wasn't very good, or you didn't get a media statement out for 3 hours. So some of those things, but not kind of too much a blow by blow. Did you think you did the right thing here? Did you not do the right thing there? Maybe that's more for sort of instant debrief when you're going to go into the detail here. But I don't think there's really the time to go into this kind of, do you think at 3 minutes in, was that the right decision? You knew something there's not always that time to go into those
Levels of
minutiae,
minutiae.
the actual response, as opposed to looking at it overall.
Maybe the consultant was getting paid by the word.
Yes, exactly.
Quite possibly.
73 points.
So if you had one last key giveaway, takeaway, what would it be?
In your exercise career, as a person maybe new to exercising, start simple, go complex. Don't start complex, go impossible.
Yeah, and I think a little bit is keep it simple. I think people are a bit scared of exercising. They think there is some magic to it. There's not really that much to tell anyone.
There is.
Yeah, lots of magic to it. It's more about experience of dealing with people, but the actual functional bit of running the exercise. And even if you just get your team together for 10 minutes and say, right, this has just happened, let's think about it there. So I think exercise, don't be afraid to exercise. Explore it, even if you've not got exercise skills, go on the exercise course, but start, as you say, start small, but do exercises. You can do them short, you can do them longer, but don't say, well, we've only got the budget for one exercise a year, so that's all we're ever going to do. Do your own exercises. That's how you'll learn. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you for your insights, gents.
You are welcome.
Thank you very much.